Energy to fight. But to have the energy to fight, we need rest, and now I'm confused.
It's open. Looks like this used to be a dining hall.
I bet it was something to see back in the day.
Yeah, you can definitely see the wobble. He's not hard. He's not easy to keep on camera because of how he moves and he kind of whiplashes. He eats great and he's super friendly, but yeah, you hate to see a wobble like this in a young, healthy bull, otherwise healthy bull. Yeah. You can tell it's hard for him. He does his best. He's not shedding. That's an old shed that was in the hide he was in. But yeah, you can see he does not quite keep his head upright. He's not too bad at it, but yeah. I'm just lucky that he eats. He's a drop feeder. So I leave the food in the hide that he's in, and he eats it just fine. His name is Dutch. He does his best, but yeah, he goes a little topsy-turvy. Pretty much every time I have him out, he goes a little topsy-turvy. He's a cutie, though. Looks just like Duke, the snake I had that died of kidney failure. Duke was quite a bit bigger. See, he's upside down. He doesn't know what's going on. Duke was a great snake. He was the most personable snake I've ever met in my life. And that's including my Kenyan sand boas, who were very personable. But yeah, Duke was the best. Dutch is not quite as friendly as Duke, but he's doing his best. Duke did not have a wobble, even though he had the same morph exactly. I mean, he did have, when he ate, he kind of wobbled. You could tell he missed his food. He didn't know where it was. He'd kind of lose his balance, but that was the only time he wobbled. This guy, I think, is just not used to handling yet. So you can see he's wobbling a lot because I think he's like slightly stressed out and slightly overexcited to be out of his enclosure. Whereas Duke was perfectly fine with being handled. Even when I was giving him injections, he was totally chill. He didn't care. This guy's just a little new to being handled. He's quite young. He will settle down as he gets older, and hopefully the wobble will improve as he gets older. One reason I bought him was just to keep him from being bred. The other part was nostalgia and sentimentality because he looks like my Duke. And that's why I named him Dutch. Dutch after Duke. So my 3 balls are Dutch, Dax, and Darlow. And this is Dutch. He's a good eater. He eats frozen thawed, even though he was on live when I bought him. He's really pretty. He's got that great pixelation to his scales. He's a good boy. Woo! You hate to see such a wobble. And sadly, there is worse. Sadly, there is worse. Ooh, hold on here. Try to get him contained, kind of. Oh, I suck back through, huh? Yeah, sadly, there's worse. There's the point that they can't keep their head up at all. He goes upside down, but he manages to flip himself right side up, as you can see. Well, you can't see, because he kind of got away from the camera, but every time he gets upside down, he gets himself right side up. And I don't even think he's stressed. I think he's just overexcited, because being out of the enclosure is a lot of stimulation, especially since my asshole neighbors are playing massive fucking bass music, and these guys don't hear super well. You know, they don't have external ears, but they can hear, especially on those lower frequencies, especially on things like bass, where it's like a physical vibration that's pounding the walls. So he definitely hears that. I've filed a noise complaint, but it doesn't matter. Neighbors do what they want. I live in the ghetto, and I think most of it is just being held that's stressing him out. So I don't hold him for super long. He's actually doing really good because he's staying held on to me, whereas snakes I have had in the past that were super unfriendly would do everything they could to get out of my hand. So like, yeah, he's a little topsy-turvy. He's going a little upside-downsy-wownsy. But mostly he's just exploring, and exploring is exciting, so he's wobbling a little bit. Because if you don't know, the spider wobble gets worse when they're excited. Good or bad excited, just excited. That's why it tends to be worse when they feed. That's one reason I think that he's a drop feeder. It gives him up to like an hour or two for him to just find his food and figure out how to wrap onto it. Whereas my other ball, Dax, his big brother, he wraps his food, he strikes it, and he wraps it immediately. He won't drop feed, actually. He's a little picky, and he'll only eat quail. Which is fine, because I always have a reputable quail breeder with... Shoot, what's it called? Living Better Quail? Yeah, Living Better Quail in Ohio. They're fantastic. They make great feeders. And aside from that, there's also Lane Labs. And if everything else fails, there's Chicks. But this guy eats either. He eats rats or he eats quail. He ate a rat last time. He's eaten quail before. And remember, he was on live feed for his upbringing. Quail is like crack for these guys. It is a great way to get picky feeders to eat frozen thawed. I've only had one snake who refused, and I've probably had like 10 ball pythons in my time. I've only had one that refused frozen thawed for his entire life. And by entire life, I mean the 2 years that I had him. I eventually sold him because I don't like feeding live. And he was so fucking stubborn. His name was Bishop. He was very pretty. He was so stubborn, he refused, period. He would rather, starve to death. So I'd get him a rat every week or two. And it was just not worth it to go out of town to get a rat. So I actually traded him, I believe. I sold him. To somebody who was going to breed him because he was a very fancy boy. And did not mind feeding him live because that buyer bred live. So that was fine. It was a match made in heaven. But most ball pythons I get in Ohio and Columbus especially for some reason are only eating live. Whereas in other parts of the country it's considered unethical and it's considered bad breeding practice to sell something that only eats live. In Columbus it's the norm. So most of my boys, except for Dax, the other two boys have been, and Dawn, who I recently traded because she was mean, were on frozen thawed, or live before I got them. And they switched to frozen thawed with no issue. So this guy has switched with absolutely zero issue. You just stick it in the enclosure and he eventually takes it, no problems. He doesn't care if it's rat, mouse, or quail, he takes it. His brother Dax only wants quail, and that's fine. Quail is a little bit healthier anyway. Some studies, and I'm not sure if they're, how verifiable they are, but a lot of, supposed studies have shown that the stomach contents of ball pythons in the wild tends to favor birds rather than rodents. So I tend to include birds. I think they're a better prey item anyway. They have less fat and a similar protein content, and they have the phosphorus calcium mix that you want. Ball python seems to prefer them. I think they're just a little bit less like junk food. I think rats are a little bit more like junk food. But that's just my 2 cents. Leave your own perspective in the comments. The idea that ball pythons should only ever eat rats of a sufficient size their whole life, I do think is silly. Because if you think of pretty much any other animal except for snakes, it's accepted that you want to feed them a variety. Cats, dogs, livestock. There's lots of things that go in livestock grain. And you want them to eat also fresh forage, like grass. And you want them to eat hay, and you want them to eat this and that. Obviously, these guys are very different than livestock animals or dogs and cats, even though they are carnivores like dogs and cats. Obviously, they're different. But I think the idea of variety is I think it's natural, because in the wild, they would not necessarily see the exact same prey item every frickin' day. Especially in his head is getting away from me. Especially in the parts of Africa that are fairly urbanized, because that's what they seem to like. They seem to not mind living by people. So they tend to kind of hang out where people are. At least close to people, probably because Africa is a huge place and there's millions and millions of people living there and colonizing it and living in their own different cultures and such. Just like America, there's not really any part of America that's completely devoid of people. That's true of Africa. So these guys have adapted Let go of my hair, buddy. These guys have adapted pretty well to living near humans. They seem to do pretty damn well with it. And they eat whatever. You know, humans bring rats anywhere they go. But a more common food for them would probably be birds. Not necessarily just ground-living birds either, but, you know, actual flying birds, flighted birds. These guys, the supposedly, with big quotations there, big asterisks, supposedly the males live mostly in trees and the females live mostly on the ground. I think we need a fuck ton more research to be able to verify any of that. And we really need some good empirical research about ball pythons. Unfortunately, what little research there is, like, oh god, I'm blanking on his name. That one guy who breeds ball pythons and is on Snake Discovery a lot. Fuck, what's his name? I can't remember his name. You know who I'm talking about. He has a vested interest in seeing ball pythons a certain way because he breeds them and he sells them. And that's fine. He's probably not even aware that he has a bias. He's probably not even aware that he is looking for certain facts to support a specific theory. You know what I mean? But the few people that have a vested interest in researching ball pythons are people who are trying to breed them and make money off them. So they are going to look for the things they want to see. They're not, you know, using proper science. And it's not even necessarily that they're meaning to do that. My little buddy. It's just that, unfortunately, there's not, like, public funding for ball python research, as there should be. You know, they're an extremely common pet. Such a common pet. Again, look how beautiful he is. Like, they're probably the most common reptile. And I say that I'm just saying that out my ass. The bearded dragon might be more popular, or the supposedly the spider gene was found in the wild, which does not mean that it's normal and natural and totally how it's supposed to be. And I would love to see independent, unbiased scientists study these guys in the wild, including the spiders, if they do so exist in the wild, and just see what they're like. You know, do they really spend all their time in termite mounds? Are they social, like that one study suggests? Are they asocial? You know, what are their mating habits like? Do they actually take to the trees in monsoon season? Do they actually eat mostly birds if they're males and mostly ground animals if they're females? You know, I just want to know these things, and I want people without a vested interest in ball pythons to research that. If I was a scientist, I think I would do okay, but I really like the ball python, and I have this whole idea of good husbandry with a 4x2x2, so even that kind of makes me biased, and UVB, that kind of makes me biased, so even I wouldn't be the best to study these guys. But I still think I'd be better than a breeder, because, like, I would never breed this species. I think it's unethical. There's too many that need homes. Even the fact that I own a spider is probably not the best thing. I was being sentimental after the Duke when I bought him. But I take a little pride in the fact that he will never be bred. The spider gene will not carry on through Little Dutch, because I will never breed him. Don't mind how much of a mess his damn enclosure is. I haven't been able to keep these plants from getting crushed. He's upside down again. Go on, buddy. But yeah, he does use every inch of this enclosure. He mostly spends his time in his warm hide, one of his 2 warm hides. But he does go to the cool end, and I hear them at night. I hear him at night just traipsing around in there. He seems to like it a lot. He eats in here. It hasn't been a big, he was in Iraq his whole life, and it hasn't been a big transition for him. He's totally fine with it. He's like, oh, cool, 4 feet of space. I'm chill with that. Not a big deal. And that has, except for Bishop, the one who would only ever eat live, transitioning to 4x2x2 with no issue has been the norm for me. I have had, not in this enclosure, but in this enclosure down here, which currently houses a corn snake. It's a 4x2x2. I have had, I want to say 4 ball pythons in this enclosure at different times, because I've had it for several years, and they have all adapted to it with no issue. Yeah, so that's That's little Dutch. He's very special to me, very sentimental. I do have one in a rack that's about the same size, a little bit bigger. His name is Darlo. He is in there because I just got him, so he's in a sort of quasi-quarantine. You can see they're next to each other, so it's not a proper quarantine. I live in an apartment, so it's not possible to do a proper quarantine. But down there, I can monitor his feces on paper towel, and I can keep a close eye on him and take him out. And etc. And he's from a reputable breeder, so there's that at least. But yes, okay, the freaking the thing is out of the bag. I do have 2 males in here. They're gonna get upgraded to a 6 foot. They are in love. They're gay. That's Dax, who is extremely friendly. He's better than Dutch. That's Dutch. They're boyfriends. You can see Dutch came over here because, of course, his boyfriend's here. I want to get another one of these so that they can have equal access to their cool hide. So that you can kind of prove that they're not forcing themselves together because it's one hide. Whereas, like, over here, they have this... this is the same hide with the exact same amount of light and heat distribution. And they always, without fail, except for maybe, like, once or twice that I've found, choose to be in the same one. Here's this guy. He's exploring back there. I should just go ahead and show you the Daxinator. That's Daxy. He's a beautiful, beautiful boy. Yes, he is. He's very sweet. He's very good with handling. He's been handled by kids, no problems. He loves his boyfriend. This is the one that will only eat quail. But that's okay. As long as he'll eat frozen thawed, I don't care what it is. I'll feed him frogs. Fuck it. You know what I mean? As long as it's frozen thawed, I don't care. But yeah, that's Dax. This started as an experiment. Since it's going well, they're gonna get upgraded to a 6 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. Otherwise, one of them would have gotten the 6 foot and one of them would have gotten a 4 foot. You know what I mean? Because that's what I had. So one of them would have gotten an upgrade and one wouldn't. Sorry, there's anime in the background. But yeah, since they're doing so well, I'll start with the 6 foot because they're both fairly small. As they get older, I might upgrade to an 8 foot, which is better for 2 snakes. I think that you should have double the space. So it should be an 8 by 4. I don't have that much space, and I am not very good with impulse control, so I do not recommend doing this. These 2 are small enough to fit together in a 4x2x2 because they're both under 3 feet. So it's okay, they do great, they eat, they don't fight. But if you are going to try to keep 2 ball pythons of the same sex in one enclosure, I do recommend going twice the size of 1 snake. So, the size for 1 snake is a 4x2x2. So go for an 8x4x4 for 2 snakes. That is what you should do. Do as I say, not as I do. These boys are still quite young, so I'm not super worried about it. And, you know, Dax has actually calmed down a little bit since he got a boyfriend, which I also don't recommend keeping 2 males of any species together. I recommend doing 2 females. By far, I was absolutely rolling the dice with these guys, and luckily it turned out great, and they do really well. There is Dutch finding his boyfriend Dax. But yeah, if you are going to experiment with 2 ball pythons, do it the right way. Do an 8x4x4 and do 2 females. And since you're already at it, do 2 rescued females, because you will be able to find rescued females that need rescued. You will be able to find it. And you know what? You might be able to even find 2 that need rescued together. Because people will get 2 and keep them in a 20-gallon. A 20-gallon long, or they'll keep them in a tub together for their whole life, and then they'll try to sell them to you. And people say that, you know, it's unethical to take people's money in that regard, but if you want to rescue them, just take that money. Here is Darlo. He's new. This is his tub. He will eventually be going into this 4 foot, and then those 2 will be going into a 6 foot. But for now, he's in here. I need to swap out his hide with something smaller, but he is a gorgeous, gorgeous, friendly boy. That's why I named him Darlo, like darling. He is absolutely gorgeous. Woo! He was sold to me as a mahogany, but he's just a pretty normal. There's nothing special about this guy. He's just a pretty boy. I know he looks like he's in an S pose, but he's not. He's super friendly. Down the line one day I might get him a boyfriend as well, since it went so well with Dutch and Dax, but probably I'll just keep him by himself. It'll be good to be able to compare and contrast 2 males kept together in a 6 foot versus 1 male kept by himself in a 4 foot, so we'll do that in the future. Here, let go, sweetheart. I know, baby. Let me push his hide back. Yeah, I had a bigger female in here at one point, so I have a bigger female hide. So I gotta switch that. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on keeping ball pythons. I know there's a lot of controversy about it in the world, especially in America, but that's my 2 cents, and those are my boys. Alright, thank you, bye.